This diagram shows a classic sociological concept, the three distinct domains of modern life. You have the home, you have the workplace, and right in the middle intersection, you find the third place. These are neutral public spaces, like cafes or parks, where disconnected people often go to find a temporary sense of belonging. When we look at how people recover from trauma, that middle zone takes on a heavy burden. When the internal self feels unsafe, these environments provide an external emotional crutch to lean on. That brings up a critical question about how we actually measure psychological recovery. Do you know you are healed when you finally feel perfectly safe inside your chosen sanctuary? Or does true healing happen the moment you realize you no longer need the sanctuary at all? Episode 9 of The Golden Notebook explores this through a spatial shift. By migrating the feeling of safety away from a physical location and onto a specific person, the story signals that the characters are beginning to outgrow their need for a static refuge. To appreciate the scale of that shift, we have to look back at where these characters started 1 year ago. In the early episodes, their entire healing process was tied directly to their physical geography. Syed was completely adrift in the city's metro transit systems. He carried a profound sadness that kept him isolated, completely frozen in place while a crowd of commuters blurred past him every single day. Sana retreated to a quiet corner of the jazz cafe, using her journal as a defensive barrier where she could meticulously document her own grief. This timeline graph shows exactly how they were functioning. While both characters were using these public locations to survive, their trajectories ran completely parallel. They were healing in proximity to the rest of the world, but they were entirely alone. As long as their peace relied on those specific geographic coordinates, their emotional recovery remained fragile and incomplete. Cut to the present day. We are back inside the jazz cafe, but the cinematography immediately signals that the melancholy has gone, long before a single word of dialogue is spoken. The animators flood the screen with lush, warm autumn colors. You see orange leaves drifting slowly past the rain-streaked window, swapping out the old isolating dread for a cozy, deeply peaceful atmosphere. Then we see Saeed. His physical appearance is dramatically different. His face is brighter and noticeably healthier. The visual design alone confirms that the weight of his old sadness has been lifted. These aesthetic choices do heavy lifting for the narrative. They intentionally disarm you, establishing a baseline of comfort that prepares you for the emotional climax of the episode. That climax revolves around a single prop. Sana slides her newly updated journal across the cafe table over to Syed. The director forces us into an intimately close relationship with this book by cutting to a top-down macro shot. We are positioned to scrutinize the contents right alongside him. Instead of the expected walls of text cataloging her grief, we get this: a beautifully detailed, warm watercolor painting of Syed himself, holding a cup of coffee. The journal artifact has taken on an entirely new role in this scene. This flowchart illustrates the structural shift happening in the storytelling. The journal transitions from a solitary text input into a shared visuals output. The book now functions as a collaborative record. As the lines merge, the internal monologue confirms, "I used to read about her sadness, but now her pages were filled with us." Tracing the evolution of this one notebook proves that their shared life has successfully overridden their individual grief. The emotional peak of the scene arrives as Syed reads the title written directly above the painting, "My True Place of Peace." In response, Sana reaches across the physical boundary of the cafe table and deeply intertwines her fingers with his. This simple touch executes a literal spatial transfer of power. The concept of a sanctuary moves out of the physical room they are sitting in and roots itself into the invisible connection between them. The jazz cafe served as their vital psychological lifeline for an entire year. Now it has been demoted to a background setting for their romance. Zooming out to a macro-structural view, there is a clear screenwriting utility in placing this total emotional resolution in episode 9, right before the finale. This graph maps a penultimate narrative beat. Resolving the character arc early prevents internal storylines from competing with the finale's heavy plot mechanics. The concluding on-screen text, "She didn't need the cafe to find peace anymore," provides undeniable proof of this resolution. Delivering this emotional closure right now gives the audience satisfaction, while completely clearing the narrative board for whatever the final chapter brings. Ultimately, the series shows that true peace isn't about finding the perfect place to hide. It's about finding the person who makes hiding unnecessary.